good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is the Crossref community update, and we're just waiting for a few more people to be able to join us. Please do feel free to say hello in the chat. I'm Cora Kozets, and I'm connecting here from rather grayish Cambridge morning in the UK with you, and it will be great to hear who else is with us. If anybody wishes to use the automated captions, that should be possible as well. All right. Well, we're at 2 minutes past 8, and there is just over 80 of us, so I think we can probably start. Angeline is raising her hand. So I will be introducing everybody in a second, but just so you know, from our colleagues today, Luis Montilla is going to be our tech support for this call. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and he will be trying to help out if there are any difficulties. And hello to everyone. All right. So we have a very rich agenda. I shall start, and obviously, as this is being recorded for everybody's information, there will be an opportunity to catch up for anyone who might arrive late. Okay, so first and foremost, we want all engagements with Crossref to be safe and productive for everyone involved. So our code of conduct is hopefully going to be upheld by everyone. All communication should be appropriate for a professional audience of people of many different backgrounds. And any sexual language or imagery are never appropriate in such context. And please also do not refer to personal qualities or characteristics of group memberships. Empathize and be respectful of others, and be agreeable even if you disagree. And be polite even if there is a cause to complain. Do not use insulting language, harass anyone, or impersonate people. And do not expose their private information. Be encouraging and include others in the conversation where appropriate, and value their contributions. Additionally, avoid jargon, slang, or cultural references that can exclude others from engaging. Participate constructively. Aim to improve the discussion and ensure that your contribution is on topic and helpful to others, and never post spam or attempt to mislead others. Crossref does not allow the use of AI assistants in meetings, and any AI assistants that might join us during the session will unfortunately be excluded. And anyone violating this code of conduct will be removed from the meeting, and please send reports to the conduct@crossref.org in confidence. So thank you very much for obeying the code of conduct. And here are today's speakers. As I said, we have a rich agenda. Hence, the number of speakers is obviously quite big. I will mention everyone when we talk about the agenda. So we are going to have an update about our governance and operations by Ed Pence. We have a membership update from Robbie Karozalian. And Amanda Bartel will introduce member practices working group, and Helena Kazing will talk about the metadata update. We'll then have a Q&A and hopefully a short break. And after that, we'll have some demonstrations of our new funder matching by Dominika Tkaczyk, data citations endpoint by Martin Richmond, and another Q&A about those demonstrations, if there are any questions. And then we'll have a demonstration from Lena Stoll about Metadata Manager's latest features. And from Madhura Amdekar, we'll finally hear about upcoming service providers program with a closing Q&A. So I think with that, we're ready for Ed. So please, Ed, you have control of the slides.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, I'm Ed Pence, Executive Director of Crossref, and thanks everyone for coming along today. As Cora said, we've got a full agenda, and so I hope you find it interesting. And I will get started just covering some basics to get us started about Crossref operations and governance. First of all, I'd like to just touch on the principles of open scholarly infrastructure. And the principles were developed in 2015. And over the years, they've developed a little bit, and it's become an informal group of infrastructure, scholarly infrastructure organizations who have adopted these principles to help uh, govern their organizations. And so Crossref adopted the principles in 2020, and we've put out reports every couple of years or so showing how we rate against the principles. And the principles were updated at the end of last year. And so, to give you an idea of what the principles cover, it covers governance, sustainability, and insurance. And there were originally 16 principles, and these were updated, and four new principles were added because a lot of organizations had adopted them. We did a community consultation, and that went very well. We got a lot of really good feedback. And so the idea is around governance, sustainability, and insurance, and transparent operations, transparent governance, open source, open data. The whole idea is that it's a way for organizations to assess themselves but also demonstrate to the community that they're adhering to these principles, which ensure forkability, long-term sustainability, involvement of the community, and many other things that are very important for governance and open governance. And so you can go see the website. We'll share the link for that if you want to look at more detail. And there are over 20 initiatives and organizations who've now adopted these principles. And so, to just give you a sense of how this works, in 2024, we did our last assessment. Now, because of the new 2.0 principles, we'll do another assessment at the end of this year. But you can see here, and in each of the categories and against each of the principles, we highlight green where we meet them, and we have a blog post explaining and giving evidence for why we meet them, and areas where we don't fully meet them. And so it's actually had a really positive impact for Crossref and other organizations to help us improve our governance. Another key aspect of operations is our financial performance, and this is our 2024, 2025 actuals and our 2026 budget. So the overall message is Crossref is in a healthy position, growing steadily over the last couple of years. We've seen a similar trend over the last couple of years. Revenue grew 8% last year. It was 6% ahead of budget. Expenses grew 15%, so that's higher than the revenue, and so that's not a situation we want to continue forever. But we're investing in updating the system, adding new features, some of which you'll hear about today. We're hiring more staff because our membership keeps growing, but two-thirds of our costs are attributed to our team. A third of the costs are everything else, including running the system, the API. But you can see here that on the very bottom line here, the net, which is the surplus, we've had very healthy surpluses the last couple of years. And even though we're increasing expenses, we're still generating a surplus, which is important for sustainability going forward. And then finally on governance, you can look on our website in the chat. Luis has put in a couple of links to information on the Crossref website. Part of the principles is about transparency, so we put up information about our operations and sustainability and also our governance. So we're a not-for-profit membership association, and we have a board that is made up of members who are elected by the members. And so the very soon in May, there'll be an open call for board interest, so members can express an interest in serving on the board. And we have a nominating committee that reviews those expressions of interest and comes up with a slate of candidates for the election. And then that's held in September online every year. One member, one vote. So if you're interested in standing for the board, keep an eye out for the May elections. And with that, I will hand over to my colleague, Rubika.
Thank you very much, Ed. And good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. I thought I'd give us a quick update on membership. We'll start with a reminder of Crossref scale, how we've grown over the last few years, and also talk a little bit about the new members who've joined since our last community call this time last year. So firstly, many of you will have seen a slide that looks similar to this in the past. So Crossref, we now have 25,000 organizational members from 167 different countries. So a lot of growth in recent years. 51% of those members are actually based in Asia. So welcome if you are from Asia who are joining us today. So we keep seeing a steady increase throughout the last year amongst our Asian community. And 40% of those members don't actually consider themselves to be publishers. First and foremost, they consider themselves to be universities or scholar-led publishers. We are supported gratefully by 140 sponsoring organizations, or we call it sponsors, and 42 ambassadors. So yeah, I'd like to take this moment to say thank you to our ambassadors and all the sponsors for all the support that they offer to our members. Thank you so much. And we are currently got 183 million open metadata records with DOIs that are resolved, 1.4 billion times per month, which is actually 93% of all DOIs used. And there are 2.1 billion queries of our metadata each month by the hundreds of thousands of systems ingesting and reusing the metadata. And you know, probably thousands, maybe millions of individual researchers also querying the metadata. Let's take a look at the details of the new members. Let's turn for a moment to our newer members organization who have joined since our last community call last May. So welcome if there are any of you. So over 3,000 new members have joined from 142 countries. 54% of these new members are from Asia, with Indonesia providing the largest group, 17.5% of total, and India providing the next largest group with 9.5% of total. So we continue to have members joining from the US and the UK, and we also had over 100 members from Turkey. I know someone's there in Zoom's chat mentioned from Turkey, Brazil, and Pakistan. And most of the new members who joined since the last community call, almost all of them fall into our two lowest fee tiers, with only 13 new members into one of the higher tiers. So speaking of membership fee tiers, we saw a major change in January 2026 with the introduction of a new membership fee tiers for members with annual publishing revenue or annual publishing expenses, whichever is higher, of under USD 1,000. So since the last community call, 40% of new members joining fall into the new tier and 40% fall into the next tier. For those with annual publishing revenue or expenses between USD 1,000 and USD 1 million. So who are they? What's their organization type? So most of our new members fall into two types. 40% identify themselves as publishers, and 40% identify themselves as university or scholar-led. But we also see plenty of societies, 13%, and governmental agencies or NGO, 4%, as well as others like hospitals. So when they apply to the membership, we ask about whether they are using a platform or not. Interestingly, so the most popular choice remains the OJS platform by PKP, 55%. Next one is 30% that they mentioned they have no platform. And the other popular ones are WordPress, 4%, and Scholastica, 2%. So I mentioned earlier that one of our growing countries was Pakistan. Our GEM was extended in January 2026, and Pakistan was one of the new countries joining the list. As a reminder, our GEM program offers relief from membership and content registration fees for members in the least economically advantaged countries in the world. So yeah, members who are eligible for the GEM program, they will not pay Crossref membership or content registration fees. So yeah, Luis already shared the link to our GEM program to the Zoom chat if you want to know more about the GEM program and the list of the countries. So we had previously referred to the World Bank IDA list for GEM eligible countries, but in January 2026, we extended this also include IDA blend and UN list developed countries. So extending the GEM eligible list by a further 18 countries. So we are very grateful to the GEM program. Thank you so much, the GEM program. Since the last community call, we've gained our very first member in Haiti, South Sudan, and Niger. 20% of all independent members joining Crossref since the last call are GEM eligible. So yeah, this is the membership update. Thank you to the new members and welcome. If you like to share your thoughts, reflection, or questions, please feel free to drop on the Q&A box. And now Amanda Bartle will introduce the member practices working group. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Rebecca. Morning, everyone. I'm Amanda Bartel. I'm Crossref's Director of Membership, and I'm going to talk a bit today about our new Member Practices Working Group. To introduce that, I wanted to remind everyone around Crossref's role in preserving the integrity of the scholarly record. So our mission has always been to make research objects easy to find, cite, link, assess, and reuse. And as you all know, we do that by enabling our members to register DOIs and a rich metadata record about the content that they publish. And then this is shared with the scholarly community, helping to build the research nexus. And we've always aimed to keep our membership barriers as low as possible because we believe the best way to support a healthy scholarly ecosystem and preserve the integrity of the scholarly record is to make metadata about published content as open and transparent as possible, which enables members to demonstrate their practices through metadata trust signals. And when practices fall short, the metadata itself can provide a way to surface these issues. Our member terms make really clear the importance of accurate metadata. So if the community identifies inaccurate metadata, these terms allow us to suspend or revoke membership. Now, obviously, that's an absolute last resort. And our first approach is always to contact the member, explain the problem, and work with the member to get the metadata updated. But what if the reports we get in from the community don't relate to metadata and instead they relate to the members' broader practices? This is an increasing issue, and it's been a little unclear as to how and when we should respond. And I've got 3 slides here, which I'll take a flavour from to explain the sort of member behaviours that we get reports about from the community. We have disputes between the journal owner and the journal publisher. We have articles created by AI. We have fake authors, fake editorial boards. We have reports about lack of clarity around APCs, paper mills, payment for peer review, displaying false accreditation, for example, saying you're indexed in DOAJ when you aren't, authorship for sale, or one person deliberately setting up multiple legal entities to sort of hide the connection between publishers. So, in consultation with our board to help support us in tackling these issues, we updated our member terms last year, and we added in a new term which obligates our members to comply with some published member practices. And the idea of these practices is they'll provide clear guidelines for our members to help them understand what our expected behaviour of a Crossref member looks like. And in the rare situations where this can't be solved, it gives us the flexibility to act decisively and perhaps suspend or revoke membership. So we've convened a group of research integrity experts to help us build these practices. The Crossref Member Practices Working Group brings together a group of differently sized publishers from different regions, metadata users, bibliometricians and sleuths, and also representatives of other organisations working in this area, so COPE, United to Act, DOAJ. And this group is working together to create a draft of these new member practices, which will take out for community consultation and ultimately board approval. So we want to make sure these practices provide clear guidelines for members, and it's really important to us that these practices are achievable for all types of members. It's particularly important we don't want to create any extra barriers to entry or any barriers to continued membership for less experienced or less well-resourced publishers. So in terms of timescales, group's already meeting. We've been meeting since January, and at the moment we're working together on a draft of member practices. We'll then aim to take that draft out for community consultation, and then aim to have approval by our board in November and rolling out the practices by the end of the year. So we're only about halfway through developing the draft of the practices at the moment, but there's already a few themes developing. And a lot of these themes have bubbled up from discussion of title ownership disputes, which is something that comes up quite often. And some key themes emerging here are the need to make clearer the distinction between the journal owner and the journal publisher. Do excuse that most of these examples I'm talking about journals. Obviously, we have a lot of members registering other content types with us, but for the purposes of today, I'm going to focus on journals. Another theme is more upfront checking of new members to make sure they are indeed the publishers of the work they intend to register. And also the importance of capturing ISSNs. And even where there is a title ownership dispute, sharing metadata about this. So I wanted to get some early thoughts from you all on some of these emerging themes. So we have a couple of polls for you to respond to. So the first one is all about this theme of making clearer the distinction between the journal owner and the publisher. So let's launch our first poll. Okay, could one of my Crossref colleagues please audibly confirm whether we can see that poll or not?
Yes, it's visible.
Perfect. Ah, lovely. I can see people voting. So here, for the records that you register with Crossref as a member, are you the journal owner, or are you the nominated publisher of the journal owner, or are you a little bit of both? I can see the votes coming in. We seem to have some interesting results here. So we seem to have most folks are doing a little bit of both, which is really interesting. So most members, you'll be in a situation where sometimes you're the actual owner of the journal, but sometimes you're the nominated publisher of that journal. Okay, I'm going to end that one. Share results. There we go. So we can see the final results there. We've got 45% of those who responded say they are a bit of both the nominated publisher and the journal owner, followed by the journal owner as the next popular one, and then the nominated publisher. Okay, I'm going to launch our next poll. Okay, I'm hoping you can all see the next question. If you are the nominated publisher rather than the journal owner, would you say that phrase nominated publisher accurately describes what you do? And if not, what term would you describe, what would you use instead to describe what you do, as you're not the journal owner, but you are publishing the content and registering the records? So we'll give a little time for folks to answer the question there. So we've got a couple of results coming in, so I'll give that a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close that poll and let's share the results there. So we can see it looks like, generally speaking, those terms are acceptable terms to everybody, and nominated publisher seems to work. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. Okay, and thank you for your input there. So obviously we're still working through creating a draft, but do watch out for our member consultation coming in the next few months. And I'm now going to hand over to Helena.
Thanks, Amanda. Let me request control of the screen, and then I can get started. Yeah, really happy to have a chance to give you an update about our work on the Crossref metadata schema. I want to tell you a little bit about the work we've done over the last year, and then also talk to you about our plans for this year. Yeah, there we go. So last year, we released a new schema version that happened in March 2025, and that was schema 5.4. And there were three key features that we released at the time: type citations, version numbers, and preprint status.
With type citations, we're giving members the opportunity to indicate in the metadata what type of citation it is. So for example, when an article is citing a data set, it's possible now with type citations to say, this is a data citation. And so far, we're seeing 23 prefixes using type citations. So adoption is starting, but we're really hoping for it to grow. So if this is something where you think, oh, this is useful for me, then please take a look or reach out to us. We're obviously happy to help you get started. Then with version numbers, we've introduced the possibility to add a version number into the metadata. And if we look at adoption, we're seeing 25 prefixes using that, and it's mostly for preprints. So to indicate different versions of a preprint. And we're not yet seeing that much use for articles, which is really something we want to encourage. And therefore, I think it's also important to know that if you register new DOIs for different versions, there's no separate fee for that. There's no content registration fee for those versions as long as you include the relationship in the metadata and we can see that it's a version. And then the last thing we introduced was preprint status, so the ability to indicate for a preprint, for example, that it has been retracted or withdrawn. Sorry, still struggling a little with moving the slides. Oh, there we go. Then the other thing that we added to the schema last year, and that happened in December 2025, was the ability to add grant DOIs in funding metadata, so that when you register metadata for example, an article or a different type of output, you can now indicate which grant funded that work. As you probably know, we also have funder members and they register DOIs for grants. And we really want to establish that connection between the grants and the different outputs that were funded through those grants. And having a field for grant DOIs in the metadata makes it easier to establish that connection. And that grant DOI then links to a full grant record, including funding types, project information, funder details, and institutional relationships. And then a little bit about what we're working on right now. Literally right now, this week, we're working on the implementation of Schema 5.5. And really the main thing, which I'm sure many of you have been waiting for, is that we're adding support for the credit taxonomy. So that means we'll support the 14 contributor roles defined by credit. And in addition to that, we did some more work on contributors. So it's now possible to add multiple contributor roles so that a single contributor has more than one role. And also within the Crossref vocabulary, which we still support, it will become possible to flag which contributor is the corresponding author. Yeah, and then the next thing after our work on Schema 5.5, as I said, we also have funder members that register DOIs for grants, and we have a separate metadata schema for that. And we're also working on an update to our grant schema. As you can see from the number, there aren't as many versions around. So this will be schema 0.3.0. But a couple of things we'll be adding there is the possibility to indicate that a grant was awarded to an institution, because currently grants are associated with people, but sometimes a grant is also awarded to an institution. So we're adding that, and obviously that will be through ROR. You can indicate which ROR the grant was awarded to. Also, we're adding the ability to reflect that roles can change over time. And we're adding support for RAID, the Research Activity Identifier, which functions as a project identifier to indicate how a grant relates to one or more projects. And then another thing that's important to mention is that we're not only adding things and releasing new schema versions, we're also working on deprecating some schema versions because we have many. And so we started that project at the end of last year, and we have a number of schema versions that we'll be saying goodbye to at the end of this year. All the organizations that are still using one of these schema versions have been contacted. So if this concerns you, you should have heard from us already. If you're on this call and you now think, wait, I wasn't aware of this and I am using one of these, then please reach out. We're really happy to help you work through this. And this is a project that will continue over the coming years. So we'll also work on deprecating other schema 4 versions so that at the end of this whole project, we'll just be supporting the different schema 5 versions and the new upcoming schema 6. But obviously, we'll notify everyone that's impacted by this. So no need to worry about it. We'll get in touch and let you know how you can transition to a different schema version. And briefly, why we're doing this is that we're supporting over 27 versions at the moment, and that's just too much and also not helpful for our members. The fundamental structures need updating. We have such old versions around. We need more modern requirements, and we also need to tighten some of our requirements just to get better and more complete metadata. And then briefly something about what's next. The 2 new upcoming schema versions I talked about, schema 5.5 and the grant schema 030. Those are things we're already working on right now. And once those have been implemented, we'll start working on remodeling names, which is a really big project. We have a community consultation out at the moment, and one of my colleagues will put a link in the chat so you can take a look at that, and we welcome your input. So we have that proposal right now. We welcome the community's input, and then we'll start working on the actual implementation of that probably towards the end of this year. And that schema update won't just contain this remodeling names part, but we're also doing work on statements, funding statements and other statements. Currently, we're thinking about statements for funding, acknowledgements, ethics, accessibility, AI use, data availability, copyright, conflict of interest. But if there are other things that you think we should be considering, my colleague will also put a link to this community consultation in the chat, so you can add your suggestions there. And I think that was me. So with that, I think we're moving to the Q&A part of the session. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank
So,
you. Please go ahead, Lucia. Sorry, I was just
Yes.
trying to get back the control of my screen.
Yeah, okay. So we have a couple of questions for you, Helena, about the metadata schema updates. The first one is from Daniel Kawuma, and they're asking about rates, identifiers, and how can a member get access to this? And if for a GEM member, are they paid for separately or part of the membership?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So rate identifiers are not something that you'd register through Crossref, but something to register through RAID. So that's kind of a separate thing. What we're adding here now with this metadata schema update is the ability to indicate that you have a rate for the project. But if you're interested in registering rates for your projects, I suggest you take a look at the rate website and see how you could start doing that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Helena. And another question from Toby Steiner. Will it be still possible to identify roles via free text next to the credit taxonomy? This will be highly relevant for humanities and social science research, where other roles are common that are not part of credit.
So we're not removing any of the current functionality, but we're adding support for credit to our metadata schema.
Yes, that's fine. Then we have some other questions on the chat. Chaja is asking whether there are plans to include open access information at the journal article level.
I think this is not included in one of our current updates, but we're very open to additional suggestions. So definitely something we can add to our list of suggestions for upcoming changes.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that we have maybe time for one last question. Lika is asking that in the metadata schema, they were earlier being provided with subjects of the journals, and this is currently not provided in the API. Can you let us know the change? I mean, if this is going to change.
Probably one for Martin, who's also on the line. So Martin, maybe you want to jump in?
Yeah, so firstly, the reason we removed these subject categories was that they actually weren't very reliable. However, we are having a consultation to see if we can add subject categories back into the schema in some way. I believe we're kind of asking people about what kind of taxonomies and that they're using, so that we would be able to add kind of keywords for articles or subject categories for journals. I think we're probably more looking towards the article level keywords rather than journal level categories in the future.
Okay, thank you, Martin. I think that this is all we have time to do. But as Cora said, more questions, please just let us know, put it in the Q&A box. We'll try to answer in writing or in the next Q&A session. So thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll now take a very brief break. So let's be here at, basically in 5 minutes. So it's 8:49 for me. You need to check your clock to see what time it will be at your part of the world. Yeah, we can replenish drinks or check emails, and we might even have a little competition about how many of those tasks anybody accomplished during the break. So see you in 5 minutes. All right, I think we can start gathering back in. I hope people had a time to relieve their eyes from the screens, or at least relieve their eyes from the presentations and look at other things that they wanted to. Thank you for all the questions, also those that have been asked in the chat and the Q&A during the break. And we will now move on swiftly to some demonstrations of some new functionality. So Dominika, if you can take us through the funding information enrichment process. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, yes, we
Great,
can see it.
thank you. Thanks so much. So I will talk today about enriching funding information in the scholarly metadata. I will start with a little bit of context. I'll give you then an update on the matching project that we have underway, in particular the funder matching part of it. And at the end, I will show a very quick demo. Central to my talk today is this vision of the Research Nexus. You probably have seen this slide before. Research Nexus is essentially a rich and open network of relationships that connects organizations, people, outputs, and activities within the scholarly record. Research Nexus goes beyond the basic idea of just having persistent identifiers for content. Identifiers are, of course, essential, but the real value lies in understanding how those entities relate to one another. And funding information and relationships are, of course, a key part of that interconnected scholarly record. When we take a closer look at funding metadata, we can see that essentially we are dealing with three main types of entities. So we have funders or funding organizations, grants, and research outputs. Organizations can be identified with funder IDs or ROR IDs. Research outputs have DOIs, and grants have grant IDs assigned to our grants linking system. These entities should be linked to one another. So organizations award grants, organizations support research outputs, grants support research outputs. But in practice, some of these relationships are sometimes missing in the metadata when it's deposited with us by our members. One way we can fill those gaps is through metadata matching, which is one form of metadata enrichment. One particular metadata matching task very relevant here is funder matching. Funder matching identifies the funding organization based on its name provided in the metadata. When successful, it inserts the correct organization identifier into the metadata record, restoring the missing relationship between the research output and its funder. And as you might know, we are already doing funder matching at Crossref. You can see here an example metadata record or fragment of it. The original record deposited by our member contains only a funder name and an award number, but no identifier of the funder. Our matching strategy then recognized the name, Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, and matched it to the correct entry in the funder registry. The resulting funder ID was added to this record, creating the relationship that was missing. You can also see that this identifier was asserted by Crossref rather than supplied by the member, and that is made explicit in this metadata record. And we've been doing this for quite some time now. The blue area in this chart represents funder assertions where an identifier was deposited by our member. It means that there is no gap and no need to do anything. But then the gray and yellow areas combined represent this gap where we do have some information about the funder, but no identifier. Applying metadata matching over the years resulted in additional 2.8 million funder identifiers added to the metadata. So essentially, we were able to shrink this gap through metadata matching. Over the coming months, we are planning several updates to funder matching. We are rebuilding both the matching strategy and the workflows around it. As part of this work, we are transitioning from the funder registry to the ROR registry, meaning that in the future, our automated matching will insert ROR IDs into metadata records, resulting in something you can see on the slide. So the identifier in this case is the ROR ID rather than the funder ID. Everything else about the output remains the same, including the information about whether this identifier was asserted by the member or by us through matching. So why are we rebuilding the strategy if you already have and if you're already running one? Well, first, we're committed to supporting ROR more deeply across our services. And as part of that, we would like to switch to ROR IDs as the main identifier for funders. Second, our current funder matching is a part of our legacy system that lacks transparency, robust evaluation, or flexibility. So with this new approach, we are designing an open and transparent system that will be thoroughly evaluated, where we have much better control of the matching logic, enabling us to adjust and improve it whenever needed. So far, we've built the core architecture for the new workflow. We implemented the new funder matching strategy, and we are now adding more features such as handling redeposits. We plan to do more testing later this quarter, and we aim for release around the middle of the year. After that, we'll move on to developing a grant matching workflow to link research outputs with grant records wherever that link is missing. To finish, I'll try now to show a quick demo of our new funder matching in practice. So this is just a little application that we prepared. It's meant to demonstrate what the matching service is able to do. So here I can provide a name of a funder on the input. The application helpfully suggests that I can use Wellcome Trust as the first example, and I'm going to do just that. And when I click match, I can see that our matching strategy was able to match this text input to one entry in the ROR registry. So we can see the matched ROR ID here. I can click on that, and that will show me the actual registry, the actual record in the ROR registry. Through this matched identifier, this application was also able to retrieve the official organization name of this particular organization, and also this very nice image from Wikipedia. If I scroll down, we can see the raw API response from our matching strategy. The most important part of it is this list of items, a list of matched entities. We have one in this case, and you can see the matched ROR ID, the confidence score, and a list of strategies that were involved in creating this match. At this point, I'm sure you're thinking that this is a very trivial example. The name that I provided here on the input matches exactly the official organization name of this particular organization, and that is true. I have 3 more examples. They are a bit more complicated. I'm not brave enough this morning to type from memory, so I'm just gonna copy. So this is a name of one of the universities in Poland. This is the Polish name of that particular organization, and as you can see, the strategy was able to match it to the actual university. In this case, the official name of that university in bureau registry is an English name of it. But helpfully, the strategy was able to use alternative names that exist in the ROR registry, and one of them is what I typed there in the input, the Polish name of that organization. So that is very helpful. The third example is even more complicated than that. As you can see here, first of all, I will try to resolve it. We got a match back. In this case, there are some substantial discrepancies between this name variant that was provided here on the input and what I believe it was matched to, which is this name variant in the raw registry. And even with those discrepancies, the strategy was able to resolve this input. And in addition to this, as you can see, it was only the fragments of the input that the organization was matched to. It was able to ignore this first part. And as a final example, we have the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. This is a very generic name. I can imagine that a lot of organizations in the world might have a faculty with this name as part of their organizational structure. And in this case, because there's no organization within the raw registry with this name, no matches are returned. This behavior is very important. It's important to make sure that our strategy is able to recognize situations where no match should be returned. Thanks to this, we can really limit the level of incorrect information that we introduce this way into the metadata. Thank you so much. That concludes my presentation, and I will hand over to Martin.
Thank you, Dominika. Spot on time, and Martin is already with us, so thank you. Go on, Martin.
Yes. Yeah, so hi everyone. Great to speak to you. So I'm going to talk about a data citations API endpoint. This is a new API that we've recently released, which is a continuation of something which was in event data, which is recently stopped. And as the name suggests, it collects and exposes data citations that are in the metadata. I checked this morning, and we've just gone past 700,000 data citations in this database. And that may sound like a fairly large number, but in terms of all the reference information that we have, it's actually very difficult to pick out individual data citations. And we know there's specific community interest around data citations, and so we've decided we'll put them together and make them available through a specific API. And the data citations are coming from two sources. They're coming from reference metadata that our members deposit, and then they're also coming from the relationship metadata as well. So it could be that a data set is cited with a DOI in the bibliography, and then we will find out, or it could be that the relationship between a work and a data set is described. And we're looking for relations to either data sets that are being registered with a Crossref DOI, or also with a DataCite DOI. So DataCite is another registration agency which does a lot of work with archives and data sets, and they have a lot of data sets registered. And yeah, there's a few technical details, but just one that's maybe worth noting is that we record the first instance that we see a relationship. If that's later modified, removed, reasserted, we're not changing the database. We're just saying, okay, this is what we saw at this time, and that's what we're recording. So there's a few links here. The first is the kind of the base URL and the Swagger documentation, which I'll show you in a moment, and we also have some documentation on our website. We'll be sharing these slides afterwards, so you can have a look. And just to give you a flavor of the information that we can get, I plotted the number of data citations that we were getting per day over the month of March. And you can see typically, I mean, there's some variation, especially at the weekends, but typically it's 400 to 600 data citations that we're collecting per day. And you can also look at this from a member point of view. So this is the number of data citations that members have deposited in March. I've put member IDs here because I didn't want to kind of name and shame or even name and praise members, because the number of data citations here is going to be dependent on the size of the member and how many items you're depositing. But what you can see is some are really doing an excellent job, and then there's a long tail with with smaller numbers of data citations. But that depends on maybe the field that you're working in, the size of the organization, the metadata that you're collecting as a member and so on. So just to give this is a kind of brief sketch of the technical design of the API. So we're retrieving information from the Crossref API. Anything that's new in there, we look at the references, we look at the relationships, and we have an agent, which is a piece of software that does that. If it finds a reference or a relationship with a DOI, it's checking which registration agency that's with, and that's the boxes on the side here. And then if it's with Crossref or with DataCite, then we look up the type to see is this a relationship to a data set. And if it is, then that's great. We put it into a database, which then supports the API. And so at this point, I'll kind of show you a demonstration. So this is JSON metadata. So I appreciate that API demonstrations are maybe not the most visual, but this is the the output, which I'll talk about in a moment, a bit more in a moment. This is the Swagger documentation that we have, which allows you to kind of try it out. So if you click on here, then you'll see the request parameters that are available. So at the moment, you can filter by dates, by member ID. I'll show you more about that in a moment. DOI of either the object, the work that is being cited, the data set that's being cited, or the subject, which is the item that's doing the citing, or relationship type, and then you can paginate through large result sets using the page parameter. I just kind of maybe emphasize that we're looking for feedback on this. We've currently released this, as you can see, on a beta endpoint, because we want to see whether this is something that's useful for the community, whether there are additional things that you really need to be able to make this useful for you, or even if you think, actually, no, this isn't something that we need, there are other things that Crossref could be focusing resources on. We'd like to hear feedback about this, or even if you notice a bug, also really important, let us know. So what I'm going to do is just demonstrate how you can find data citations for a specific member. So we have a members endpoint in our API, and I'm just going to do a query for F1000 because I know that they do a pretty good job with data citations. And if you scroll down the results here, you'll see there's an ID field. You can also, if you're using Firefox or other browsers, that you can filter here. And this is the member ID that we use to identify members. If I click try it out in the documentation, there's a couple of default dates which we actually don't need here. So we're just going to look for data citations from F1000, and let's see if we find any. So when you click execute here, you get a curl command, which can be used in a terminal if you're familiar with APIs. There's also a request URL, which you can just plug in a browser, or there are libraries for various code languages that can do that. And then here are the actual data citations. So you get a list. You can see here there's a total of 8,300 of them. And then an individual data citation looks like this. And it's basically a triple, so three components. You've got the subject, which in this case, journal article was doing the citing. You've got the object, so which data set was being cited, and in this case, you can see it was registered with DataCite, and yeah, it looks like it's on Figshare. And then you've got a relationship, which describes how these are linked, whether maybe it's just a reference, maybe sometimes this is supplemented by, and there's other ways that you can describe relationships between works and data sets. So hopefully that gives you a flavor of what you can do. I just have one more slide that we can share afterwards, just to give you some examples of requests that you can make to get to filter by various properties or dates. And with that, I think we can move on to the Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you, Martin. There is one question so far, but if anyone else has any question, please, now is the time to put in the Q&A box. But in the meantime, one attendee is asking whether beyond DataCite, whether Crossref will also include other DOI agencies for data or other citations relationships. For example, there are other two large Chinese DOI agencies, also Metro, etc.
Yeah, I think so we started with DataCite firstly because we have an existing, but we've been collecting data citations from them already. We would love to include data citations from other registration agencies. It's probably a smaller number. The main difficulty is about being able to get those programmatically. We want to have this as an automated process, and so we need to have an API for those registration agencies, which clearly shows the type and the data set so that we can identify those programmatically. Not every registration agency has that at the moment, but we would certainly like to expand to include that if possible.
All right. Thank you, Martin. I don't see any more questions on the Q&A box. But if anyone would like to kind of raise their hands and ask a live question, that is also an option. Or in the chat. No. I mean, that's fine. We will have another Q&A section later. So if you have, I see another question here. So Dominica, this one is for you. Do members have to do anything for the funder matching?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. No change is sort of required on the member side. What I would ask, as always, is to please deposit as many correct identifiers as possible. That will help us. We won't have to run the matching as much. And if not, then accurate names of funders and other input for matching is also very helpful. If that's deposited, then our matching strategies have basically it's easier for them to match to correct entities.
Amazing. Thank you, Dominica. Okay, so if you have any more questions, please just share them on the Q&A box, and then we can just answer them on the next kind of section. Thank you. Oh, okay. Last one. Now that I see that we have some more time. Are there any plans to update the web deposit form to include a field for licenses? I think that we have a presentation just in a bit about this, but if anyone wants to answer this, or should we just leave it for later?
I think this gives us a perfect segue to Lena's presentation about Metadata Manager. So I'll stop sharing my screen to enable Lena to do that. And let's move on. And obviously, if that question hasn't been answered by the presentation, we'll come back to it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we are not talking about the web deposit form so much anymore, although it will continue to exist for the foreseeable future. But let me start talking about our new Metadata Manager first. Yeah, so we retired the legacy old Metadata Manager interface at the end of last year. And we replaced it with a more modern and flexible helper tool for record registration. And that's our new Metadata Manager, and it's been in use for a few years now already by an ever-increasing number of members who use it to register grant and journal article records. Yeah, and we're very actively continuing to develop this tool, so we'd like to share some updates with you today on what's new with it. I might try and circle back around to the web deposit form at the end of this, since I have a couple extra minutes of time, I think. So I went back to my slides from the Crossref 2025 event last October at the presentation that went along with our last annual meeting. Back then, we demoed how to edit a record in Metadata Manager, which was a brand new feature at the time. You have a list on a page in the new Metadata Manager now where you can select from your previous deposits, and then it loads the latest metadata for the record into the submission form for you, and you can make changes to the metadata and resubmit it. Since then, we've also added this very handy search field up here where you can, rather than looking for it in the table, you can just directly enter the DOI of any supported record, i.e. currently a journal article or a grant record. And then if you have access, if you have permissions to edit that record, you can edit its metadata that way. Also new in the last few months is that we've added some fields in the journal article registration form that let you register relationships metadata. That, of course, is really key for building that research nexus vision that you just heard about in one of our previous presentations, or maybe a couple of them even. Yeah, so that's quite simple. As you can see here, you just select the type of relationship that you want to register from a preset list, and then you enter the DOI of the related work, and you can get relationships metadata into your record that way. This now is where it gets really interesting, the coming soon section. So right now, as I already mentioned, the new Metadata Manager only supports registering journal article and grant records, but we've been working very hard on building support for a number of new work types. That's including books and chapters, conference proceedings, reports, dissertations, and even post-publication updates. And I'll give you a sneak peek at each of these forms and what they will look like. Yeah, so just to give you an idea, if you've used the new Metadata Manager before to submit journal content, for example, then none of this layout will be a big surprise to you. You can see here at the top that there's a few pages to this form. First, there's a page for some book level metadata. You can select the type of book and titles, edition number, of course, DOI and landing page, that sort of thing. Then there's a page to optionally also register chapter metadata and chapter level records. And then finally, also optionally book series metadata if that's applicable. Then you get a chance to review everything that you've entered before you confirm your submission and submit. Very similarly for conference proceedings, you'll have a page to enter data about the event and the proceeding itself. You can, if you want to, add individual conference papers and also conference series information, review and submit. Reports are another work type that we'll be supporting soon. There's also the option of registering series metadata for reports. Otherwise, these forms are probably already starting to look pretty familiar to you. They're all quite similar. You want to keep them as simple and usable as possible. And dissertations are even more straightforward. They will just have the one page in the form where you can enter the dissertation metadata before reviewing and submitting. And then finally, you'll also soon be able to register post-publication updates in Metadata Manager. So that's things like retractions or corrections or expressions of concern. We're building a form that will let you do this for journal content without having to go really deep into the crossmark section of our input schema. So right now, if you're not comfortable working with XML, it's quite difficult to register post-publication updates. It is supported in our web deposit form if you really know what you're doing, but it's very easy for people to get confused and get that wrong. So with this new form, we'll hopefully make that a lot simpler. And since we do have a bit of a time buffer, it might be nice if we do a quick live demo, and I'll show you this tool in action. Probably best if I go out of this view and open in a new tab. So I'm using here a demo instance of the new Metadata Manager, but this is hooked up to our live deposit system, so I'm not going to be sharing this link for you to test along because you might find you're registering real records and you get billed for them. So buyer beware. But I'll just sign in here with the demo account, and just as an example of what these new forms look like, I'll be registering a post-publication update. Say a retraction notice for an article in my journal. So I just kind of blasted through this pretty quickly, but you already saw on my slide earlier that I have in the first screen here, I have the choice of what type of record I'm submitting. This is going to be a post-publication update. The first thing I have to do here is let the system know what type of update it is I'm registering. I said retraction. I can choose this from this preset drop-down of options, but I can also start typing the thing that I'm looking for, which will be retraction. Apparently I've already done a few different examples here. The title of my update notice is going to start as per COPE best practices with a word that makes it really clear what's going on here. Title of the original article. And yeah, it's best practice that you register a separate record for the retraction notice itself. And that makes it really clear for anyone downstream and also for Crossmark, if that's implemented on your platform, to understand what has been retracted by whom, when, where. So that's why we've built this form in this way, where you can register a DOI for the retraction notice itself. Let's say it's hosted on my wonderful publishing platform at this link. And then I also need to enter the DOI of the article that I'm updating, i.e. retracting, which we will call this. I also have the option here of adding contributor metadata for the retraction notice itself. That's kind of handled differently by different members. Some publishers like to put the names of the original authors of the retracted article also in the metadata for the retraction notice. Some don't. I'm going to not do that. So it's not necessary to add contributor metadata for a post-publication update. What I will add, however, is a publication date. So let's say that this is going online tomorrow. And then that's already all the basic metadata for the update notice itself that we need. So I can proceed to the second page of the form, and here on this page I have to enter some details about the journal that I am publishing my retraction in. So I could enter the journal ISSN and the journal title here manually, but I also have this handy list here of all of the titles that I've previously registered as my current user role that I've currently registered content into. So I'm just going to select one of them and it pre-fills the ISSNs and title for me. If you know the Crossref system well, you'll know that it's quite finicky about having the exact same title of the journal in every deposit, or it might fail. So it's good to be able to rely on this to pick the right journal for you. And then I just need to enter the DOI of my Crossmark update policy. So that's a page where the member states how they handle post-publication updates for the Crossmark service. I'm just going to call that 10.5555/Crossmark. So that's kind of the fundamentals of this form. Here is the review step where I get to check again that I've entered everything correctly and everything looks good before submitting to the system. That all looks about right for what I've entered. And then if I hit submit, if there was an error from the Crossref system, like for example, I'm trying to retract an article that doesn't exist, the system checks whether this DOI exists, but I did register this earlier, so it should be fine. If there was an error, there would be a pop-up that tells me right away what the problem is. I don't have to wait for an email or anything, but in theory, this should go through fine. Okay. So you can see I get a success page here that tells me everything was successful, what the DOI is that I've just registered. I can click through to the Crossref admin tool, which I'm sure many of you know and love, where I can see the XML that I've just submitted and see more information about my deposit. Or I can go back to the start of Metadata Manager and submit another record. So I think that's all I wanted to show for the quick demo. So let me go back to sharing my screen. Thanks so much for listening and watching today. We're going to be releasing all these new forms that I've just given you a glimpse at over the next few months as they fully get ready. There's a few more technical kinks to iron out. But as you saw, we're already quite far along in the work, so that's really nice. We have in our community forum a very long-standing thread about this, at the time, brand new helper tool, where you can share your feedback if you've been using the new Metadata Manager for a while, or you just want to try it out once for one of your records. Please do share your feedback. And the last thing that I wanted to draw your attention to, slightly relatedly, because it's from the world of content registration, if your institution is a user of DSpace repository software, there is in the next version of DSpace, which will be version 10, coming in the next month or so, there will be a Crossref content registration integration included. So you'll be able to register Crossref metadata and DOIs in an automated way for things like the citations that you're hosting in your DSpace repository. More information on that to come as we have it, but we thought that was exciting news. So thanks, Louise, for sharing the links in the chat. I think that's it from me, and I'm going to hand over to Madhura for talking about the Service Providers Program.
Thank you, Lena. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to share our plans of launching a new version of the Crossref Service Providers Program in 2026. So as several of you may be already aware, Crossref works with the scholarly community to develop metadata registration services in response to the evolving needs of the community. And as you have heard in several presentations before, this rich metadata is really crucial because it promotes discoverability, transparency, and also important for preserving the integrity of the scholarly record. And we see service providers as key partners and facilitators of best practices in this area. So historically, Crossref service providers included organizations such as hosting platforms, manuscript submission systems, XML or metadata providers, and general publisher services organizations that were selected by Crossref members to create, register, or display metadata on their behalf. And until 2022, we ran the first version of the Crossref Service Providers Program, but we realized that the program needed some improvement, and it was paused in the year 2022 in order to review it. We are now planning to formalize the collaboration between Crossref and service providers, and we'd like to launch a new version of the Service Providers Program in 2026, where we propose a much closer collaboration between us and the service provider organizations. When the program is launched, it will first focus on service providers that enable content registration for Crossref members. And we are proposing 2 tiers under this program for service providers. And I'm going to talk more about this later. So this slide shows some of the key goals of the program. As I mentioned, the first and foremost aim is to enable the registration of high quality and rich metadata for our members, because this will lead to benefit for not just our members, but to Crossref, to service providers, and the wider scholarly community as well. We are also hoping that this collaboration between Crossref and service providers will enable smoother implementation of Crossref services for our members. Service providers will be able to support the implementation of Crossref schema versions, so then this can be also adopted by Crossref members. And service providers will share up-to-date information about the services that they are able to integrate and provide to their clients. There will be no fee associated with this new service providers program. As part of this program, service providers will commit to the following. They would be staying up to date with Crossref services and policies. We'd like to get feedback about our services from them. These organizations would give Crossref information about their client service offerings and the documentation about metadata workflows. Promoting metadata best practices as per our participation reports tool. We'd also like to see them make reasonable efforts to accommodate changes to the Crossref schema and other services. Another commitment would be to ensure that clients' DOIs continue to resolve to relevant content and landing pages. As I mentioned before, there will be 2 tiers of this new program. So for service providers to meet the basic tier of this program, these would be the requirements that they should be able to meet. They should be able to enable members to register content and deposit required metadata. They should have the ability to support and display multiple client prefixes. They should be able to support continuous resolution of clients' DOIs in case of platform migrations, for example. And also keep direct communication channels open with Crossref and so as to share feedback about our tools and integrations. The second tier would be the advanced tier. So service providers who fall under this tier should be able to meet all the requirements of the basic tier, as well as facilitate the deposit and update of the required, recommended, and optional metadata elements that appear in participation reports. They should also be able to support the latest schema versions, which means that any of the schema 5 versions, such as 5.3.1 and 5.4.0, would be the threshold for the advanced tier when the program is launched. So currently, we are working on an application form that we'll make available on our website, which service provider organizations can use to apply and be a part of this program. The focus at the time of launch will be on entities that enable content registration. So once the application form is launched and organizations fill in the application form, we will be reviewing these forms and then we will schedule accreditation calls with the applicants. Using the information that was filled in the form, we'll determine the tier of the service provider in question. Once the organizations are set up and their tier is determined, we'll also make available on our website a list of the organizations that fall under the basic or the advanced tier. Those organizations that are accredited service providers will be asked to renew their accreditation annually through the submission of a reaccreditation form, which may contain new requirements, for example, support for a new schema version that may have launched. So currently we are at the consultation stage of this program and we are aiming to launch the program later this year. So keep watching the space for more information about that. I think that's all I had to share about the launch of the new program. But as we are working towards the launch, we'd really like to hear from you. Which service providers in this space would you like to see as part of the new version of Crossref Service Providers program? If you have any suggestions, please feel free to share them in the chat. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, well, thank you, Madhuri. I think that bring us to the last Q&A session. Just to make sure that that you can share your questions in the Q&A box. If you are not aware, you can find the Q&A box in your toolbar. If you don't see it, maybe it's hidden behind the 3 dots. So if you click on the 3 dots, you might be able to see the Q&A box. If you would prefer, also please just raise your hand and we will unmute you so you can ask your question live. But yeah, in the meantime, please just keep sharing your questions, not just about this last session. If you have any questions about any previous presentation, please just share that as well. We'll be happy to answer. But I see a couple of questions on the box. So one attendee is asking whether we will still need Crossmark if we have this form, and is Crossmark available as we use OJS? Lina.
Yeah, I was just typing a response to this, but maybe it's more fun if we do it live. So there are kind of different levels to using Crossmark. Our input schema requires that DOI of the post-publication update policy in the metadata if you're registering a post-publication update. So you do need a page on your website or publishing platform where you talk about how you handle post-publication updates. But that doesn't mean that you have to fully implement the Crossmark service. You don't have to put the button on your landing pages and your PDFs in order to register post-publication updates. Any member can do that. So no, you don't need to fully participate in Crossmark. With OJS, there is support for Crossmark coming. We're working together with PKP on implementing this and creating a plugin for that, but that's still in the works and not quite in the immediate future yet. But yeah, we are working on this because it would be a great benefit to our large community that uses OJS. So thanks for that question.
Right, thank you. We also have a question from Ang and Tulga. They're asking if it's possible to have multiple accounts for the manage.crossref.org/records for a single prefix.
Well, so the accounts that you use to log into that interface are the same as you would use in our admin tool or anywhere else where you're using our systems. So it depends. We get really into the weeds of our authentication system now. I don't want to go too deep into this, but it is possible to have different accounts for different people, or in some cases, depending on how your member setup works, you will be sharing one set of credentials. Maybe actually someone from membership wants to talk here before. Yeah, there's Amanda. That's what I thought.
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to add, I know, Gantolga, you represent a sponsor organisation. And I wonder if this question is about how you work with your sponsored members. So in case that was the question, how this would work with sponsored members is each of your sponsored members would have a different prefix, and you'd have a separate set of credentials for working with each of those prefixes and each of those sponsored members. So if you were registering records for those sponsored members, you'd have to log in with the credentials for each sponsored member one at a time. So you'd log in with the credentials for sponsored member number 1, register the records for them. And then you'd have to separately log in again with the credentials for sponsored member number 2 to register the records for sponsored member number 2. So in case that's what you were asking, that's how that would work.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We also have another question that, Lina, I see that you've already kind of answered in writing, but I'm going to ask you to answer again so it's in the recording maybe, now that we have time. So Toby's asking whether there are plans to include posted content, such as blog post, in the workflow for the Metadata Manager.
Ah, right, yeah. Well, this gives me a great opportunity to curve back around to the web deposit form. Yeah, we'll continue building new forms and support for new work types into the new metadata manager. We really want it to be more of a one-stop shop for anyone who relies on manual helper tools for registering their records than the old metadata manager ever was. Posted content is certainly a commonly used record type, so we should support this. The reason that we went ahead with the record types that we're currently working on is, well, twofold. One, they were some of the most commonly requested features. Books and chapters, for example, are obviously a very important work type for a lot of our members. But then also those are the record types that you can currently register with our web deposit form. And while it is a very trusty old tool that has served great great services for many, many members over the years and/or decades. Perhaps eventually the time will come when we can consolidate to really just having one manual helper tool that serves all of the needs of all our members. And so, yeah, we wanted to get to a point where we can, in future, at some point, replace those parts of the web deposit form that we'll be able to replace with an even better tool. Which is also why we're not bringing that many new improvements to our web deposit form, because the metadata manager is really the interface that we're investing the most time and effort into making as comprehensive and usable as possible.
All right. Well, thank you, Dina. I think that with that, I'll hand over to Cora to close, I believe.
All right. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone who joined us this morning, although that might have been a different time of day for you. And of course, rest assured, we will share the recordings and the slides after today's event. We'll have one more happening in the later time today as well for others to join. Thank you very much for all the questions and comments in the chat as well. As it says here, you can continue the conversation with us on our community forum or potentially on social media if you prefer that. Yeah, please look out for further communication about any of the things that were mentioned today, because we will be talking about further developments to you separately. All right. Well, thank you also to all the speakers. There was quite a few of us today, so there was a lot of faces, and it's been a stellar job. And thank you for Lewis for all the tech support, and to Rocio for supporting us with the Q&As. Thank you very much, and see you next time.